The phone call that changed everything. The evening sun was dipping low across the horizon, painting the sky with soft orange and fading purple, when Sundar Pichai sat by the window of his quiet office. Google's headquarters buzzed with the distant rhythm of engineers, designers, and dreamers chasing the next big idea. But Sundar's mind was far away. In front of him lay a pile of papers, contracts, and decisions waiting for his attention, yet he felt strangely disconnected from them all. The world outside saw him as a powerful CEO, a man who carried the weight of billions of users' trust. But tonight he was simply a son, still tied to memories of a modest childhood in Chennai. His phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. It wasn't the usual corporate message or meeting reminder. The screen flashed with one word that froze him where he sat. Appa. His father rarely called these days. Age had slowed him down, and Sundar had made sure to set up every comfort for his parents back in India. Still, he never forgot the sacrifices his father made. The years of saving every rupee so Sundar could go to school. The nights working, late despite illness. The way he always carried himself with dignity even when money was short. With a slightly trembling hand, Sundar answered. Appa? His voice softened, betraying both surprise and warmth. On the other end came a weak, but steady tone. Sundar, I need your help. Those words struck harder than any boardroom debate or shareholder demand ever could. His father had never been the kind to ask for favors. In fact, he had always been the one teaching Sundar to stand strong, to never burden others, to face life with quiet courage. What happened? Sundar asked, already standing from his chair. His heart raced with unease. There is something I cannot handle alone, his father continued. It is not about me. It is about our family. The line went silent for a moment, filled only with static. Sundar felt an uneasiness crawl through him. This was no ordinary request. Tell me, Sundar urged, his voice carrying both fear and determination. His father took a long breath, and then the words came slowly. A man came to our house. He said something that shook me. Sundar, I do not know if I should believe him, but if what he says is true, everything changes. Sundar felt his grip tighten on the phone. What did he say? His father hesitated, then whispered, He says he knows something about your past, about a choice I made when you were still a boy. He says I must tell you now before it is too late. Sundar felt his world tilt. His past? What could his father be hiding all these years? His throat went dry. Appa, are you saying there is something I don't know about myself? There was a painful pause, and then his father said softly, Yes, my son. Sundar's mind spun. The boy who had grown up in a small home with shared rooms, who had dreamed over circuit boards and books, who had fought his way from Madras to Stanford and then into the heart of Silicon Valley. Was there a hidden truth behind it all? Appa, I am coming to you, Sundar said firmly. Don't say anything more on the phone, just wait for me. His father gave a faint reply. Come quickly. The call ended, but its weight lingered like a storm cloud. Sundar leaned back against his desk, his breath uneven. He had faced investors doubting his vision, critics questioning his leadership, competitors trying to crush Google, but nothing had ever shaken him like those simple words. There is something about your past. For the first time in years, Sundar felt like a child again, uncertain and searching. What could his father possibly mean? Had his life been built on a secret he never knew? The night grew heavier, and as Sundar walked out of the office, he noticed how different everything felt. The walls of Googleplex, usually a source of pride, seemed smaller now compared to the mystery unfolding in his own family. On the flight home, his mind replayed memories of childhood, the nights he sat on the floor studying under dim light, the way his father encouraged him to dream beyond their circumstances, the pride in his mother's eyes when he got into Ayat Kharagpur. Everything seemed clear then, simple and true. But now, a shadow had fallen across those memories. Was there something his parents never told him? Was there a reason his father chose this moment after so many years to reveal it? The plane descended into Chennai, and Sundar's chest tightened with emotion. He hadn't felt this nervous arriving home since he was a student carrying his acceptance letter to America. At the modest house where he grew up, the familiar smell of home greeted him. His father sat in the old wooden chair near the window, frail but dignified, his hands resting on a cane. His eyes lit up at the sight of Sundar, but behind them was a depth of worry. "Appa," Sundar said, kneeling beside him. "I came as fast as I could. Now tell me, what is this about?" His father looked down, silent for a long time, as though gathering strength to speak. The room was filled with tension, every second stretching into eternity. Finally, he raised his eyes and said in a low voice, "There is something you must know, something I promised myself I would never reveal. But now I fear time is against me. You must hear it." Sundar's heartbeat thundered. "Tell me, please." His father's eyes grew misty. "When you were born, Sundar, you were not alone." The words sank like a stone into Sundar's chest. He stared at his father in disbelief. "What do you mean?" he whispered. His father closed his eyes, the weight of decades pressing down on him. "You had a brother, a twin, and I had to make a choice that day. A choice that haunts me still." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Sundar froze, unable to breathe, unable to think. A brother? A twin? All his life he had believed he was the only son. The silence was unbearable, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. "Appa," Sundar's voice cracked, filled with shock and confusion. "Are you telling me I have a brother I never knew existed?" His father's hand trembled as he reached out and gripped Sundar's arm. "Yes, my son, and now he has returned." The shadow of a forgotten brother. The words hung heavy in the air, heavier than anything Sundar had ever carried on his shoulders as a CEO, heavier than the burden of decisions that shaped the future of technology. You had a brother, and now he has returned. The room seemed to shrink around him. The faint hum of the ceiling fan above, the smell of masala from the kitchen, the old photos on the wall, all the ordinary details of home suddenly felt like the backdrop to a revelation that shattered the very foundation of his life. Sundar stared at his father, his lips trembling, his mind refusing to believe. "Appa, what are you saying? A brother, a twin, all these years and you never told me?" His voice cracked, filled with both hurt and disbelief. His father's eyes watered. He looked older than ever, his face lined not only with age, but with regret. "I wanted to protect you. I wanted to protect both of you. But fate was cruel. Sundar, the day you were born, the doctor told us we could not keep both children in our care. Our home was too poor, our resources too small. We were faced with a choice no parent should ever make. One child stayed with us and the other was taken away by a distant relative who promised a better life. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself one day I would explain. But then the years passed, and the secret grew heavier, and I became a coward." Sundar felt his chest tighten, anger and sorrow colliding within him. All his life he had believed in hard work, in resilience, in dreams fueled by love and sacrifice. Now he wondered, was his story incomplete? Was there another boy, born of the same blood, who lived a life completely separate, perhaps harder, perhaps easier, perhaps hidden in shadows? "Appa," Sundar whispered, his throat dry. "Where is he? Who is he? What is his name?" His father lowered his gaze. "His name is Arjun, and last week he came to me. He stood right where you are now, Sundar, and he looked at me with eyes so much like yours. But those eyes carried pain, anger, and questions I could not answer. He said he has suffered much. He said he would find you. He said the world would soon know the truth." Sundar's hands clenched. His entire body trembled with a storm of emotions: shock at having a twin, guilt that he had lived a life of success while Arjun may have struggled, and fear of what this revelation could bring to his family, his company, his identity. He tried to breathe steadily, but questions poured out of him. "Why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you tell me immediately? What does he want?" His father's voice shook. "He wants answers. And perhaps he wants justice. He blames me for abandoning him. And he may blame you too, even though you had no part in it." The room seemed colder now, as though the truth had opened a door to something dark. Sundar stood up and began pacing, his mind racing with images of this unknown brother. What did he look like? Where had he been all these years? Was he poor, broken, angry at the world? Had he watched Sundar rise to global fame while he remained in the shadows? Sundar closed his eyes, recalling news articles, interviews, photographs. How strange, he thought, if all along there had been another man who looked like him, walking the same earth, carrying the same blood, but living a completely different story. His father coughed, breaking the silence. Sundar, I know I betrayed your trust by keeping this secret, but you must listen. Arjun is not just here to meet you. He is here with something else. He said he carries proof. He said the truth will shake the world. The words sent chills down Sundar's spine. What? Proof? What truth? Before he could ask, the faint sound of footsteps came from outside. Both men turned toward the door. The creak of the old wooden gate echoed through the night. A shadow passed across the dim light, spilling into the house. Sundar's father whispered, almost trembling. He has come. The door opened slowly, and there stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, his face partly hidden by the shadows. But when he stepped forward, Sundar felt as though he were staring into a distorted mirror. The man's features were eerily similar, his jawline, his eyes, his stance. But there was something hardened, weathered, scarred by life. The stranger's voice was low, but sharp. So, we finally meet. Sundar's breath caught in his throat. Arjun? The man's eyes narrowed, a bitter smile forming. Yes, Sundar, your lost brother, the one you never knew existed, the one who watched your name rise across the world while I was left behind to fight for scraps. The room fell into silence. Sundar's father looked down, ashamed. Sundar struggled to find words. I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know. Arjun stepped closer, his gaze piercing. Of course you didn't. Why would you? You were living the life that was chosen for you, the golden child of the family, while I was given away like a burden. Anger and sorrow burned in Sundar's chest. If what you say is true, then we both were victims of the same fate. I didn't choose this either. Arjun's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of conflict passing through his hardened face, but then his jaw tightened. No, Sundar. You may not have chosen it, but you benefited from it. You had everything: education, opportunity, the world at your feet. While I lived with nothing. And now I have come to claim what was stolen from me. Sundar felt the tension crackle in the air. His father's eyes darted nervously between the two men as though fearing what might happen next. What do you mean? Sundar asked cautiously. Arjun reached into his worn leather bag and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the table with a thud. Inside this are documents, photographs, and letters, proof of the life I lived, proof of the injustice done to me, and proof of something even more shocking. Something about our family that you do not yet know. Sundar stared at the envelope, his heart pounding. His father closed his eyes as though bracing himself for a storm. Arjun's voice cut through the silence. You think you know who you are, Sundar? But this will change everything. Sundar slowly reached out toward the envelope, his hand shaking. His mind screamed with questions. What could be inside? What could possibly change everything he thought he knew about his family, his childhood, even his identity? Just as his fingers touched the edge of the envelope, Arjun's hand shot forward, stopping him. His eyes blazed with intensity. Not yet. You will hear my story first. You will hear what I endured, what I lost before you see what I have carried all these years. Sundar froze, staring into his brother's eyes, feeling both fear and an odd connection. Then tell me, Sundar whispered. Arjun's lips curved into a bitter smile. Very well, but be ready, Sundar, because once you hear it, there is no turning back. The story of the forgotten son. The room felt smaller, almost suffocating, as Sundar sat across from Arjun. The dim light of the single bulb above them cast shadows across Arjun's face. shadows that seemed to carry years of untold pain. Sundar's father sat silently in the corner, his head bowed, as though each word about to be spoken would cut into his soul. Arjun leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Sundar's. "You want to know what I endured, brother? Then listen carefully, because every word of it is carved into my life. While you sat in bright classrooms and dreamed of the future, I sat in the dark corners of a house that never felt like mine. You grew up with parents who encouraged you even in their poverty. I grew up with relatives who reminded me every day that I was unwanted." Sundar's throat tightened. He had always remembered his childhood as difficult, but filled with love. The idea that his own blood had lived the opposite reality struck him deeply. Arjun's voice was sharp, filled with bitterness, but beneath it was also a fragile ache. "They said my parents gave me away because they couldn't afford me. They told me I was the burden left behind, the mistake they were too weak to carry. Do you know what that does to a child, Sundar? To hear every day that he was rejected? At birth?" The word sliced into Sundar like a knife. He glanced at his father, who flinched but said nothing. "My childhood was hunger, Sundar," Arjun continued. "Not just hunger for food, though there were many nights when I went to bed with nothing. It was hunger for love, for acceptance, for a single sign that I mattered. I worked when I should have studied. I begged when I should have played. And every time I saw a newspaper or heard a radio mention your name years later, I felt the cruel joke of destiny." Sundar could hardly breathe. He remembered his own hunger too, but it was softened by the comfort of his mother's hands, his father's encouragement. To imagine growing up without that warmth was unbearable. "I tried to rise, Sundar. I tried to make something of myself," Arjun said, his voice breaking for the first time. "But every door closed in my face. Every time I applied for school, they told me there were no funds. Every time I searched for work, they told me I was too unskilled. And the people who raised me, they never once called me son. I was a mouth to feed, nothing more." Tears glistened in Sundar's eyes, but Arjun's voice grew stronger, angrier. "Meanwhile, you were flying to America. You were studying at Stanford. You were building a future so bright it lit up the world. Do you know what it felt like to watch? To see your twin celebrated while I remained invisible?" Sundar whispered. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." Arjun slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing like thunder. "Of course you didn't. How could you? You were chosen. I was abandoned. You were the dream. I was the secret. But secrets don't stay buried forever." The room fell silent, except for the heavy breathing of both brothers. Their father's hands trembled on his cane, but he still remained quiet, unable to interrupt the storm he himself had unleashed decades ago. After a long pause, Arjun reached for the envelope again. He pulled out a photograph, an old, faded picture of a boy with messy hair and torn clothes standing in front of a crumbling house. "This was me, Sundar. While you were at university, this was my world." Sundar stared at the photo, his chest aching. It was like looking at a broken reflection of himself, a version of his life that could have been his reality if fate had chosen differently. "I am not here just to tell you my pain," Arjun said quietly now, his anger shifting to sorrow. "I am here because there is more. I learned something about our family, something that will shock you even more than my existence. The people who raised me, they were not just bitter relatives. They were hiding something. They told me a story before they died, a story that explains why I was taken away." Sundar leaned forward, his pulse racing. "What story?" Arjun hesitated, his eyes dark. "They said our family made a deal long ago, a deal that involved us, me and you. It wasn't just poverty, Sundar. It was a choice tied to something bigger, something secret." Their father finally raised his head, his face pale. "Arjun, stop. You don't understand what you're saying." Arjun's eyes burned with fury. "No, I understand perfectly. You kept me in the dark. You lied to Sundar. You think you can still control the truth, but the truth is already here." He turned back to Sundar. They told me our lives were decided before we could even walk, that one of us was meant to carry the family name forward, while the other was meant to disappear. It wasn't just survival, it was sacrifice. And I was the sacrifice. Sundar's entire body went cold. His hands trembled as he tried to process what he was hearing. Could it be true? Had his father chosen him not just because of poverty, but because of some larger arrangement, some secret buried in the family's past? His father's voice cracked, filled with desperation. Sundar, don't listen to him. I did what I had to do. You cannot understand the pressure, the situation. Enough! Arjun shouted, his voice shaking the walls. I live that decision. You don't get to silence me anymore. He pulled out another paper from the envelope, a letter, yellowed with age, with handwriting faded but still legible. He placed it in front of Sundar. Read this. It was written by our grandfather. It explains everything. Sundar stared at the letter, his hands trembling as he reached for it. His eyes scanned the first few lines and his heart nearly stopped. The words revealed a chilling truth. One child will be given the chance to rise, the other must be hidden, for only one can carry the family legacy without danger. His vision blurred, as shock overwhelmed him. What kind of legacy required such a sacrifice? What danger had his grandfather feared, and why had his father carried the secret all his life? Sundar looked up at Arjun, whose face was filled with both pain and triumph. You see? It was never just poverty. It was betrayal written into our bloodline. Sundar's father tried to speak, his voice breaking. I wanted to protect both of you. I thought it was the only way. But Sundar could no longer hear him. His world was spinning. His entire identity, his rise to success, his role as a son, a leader, even as a father himself. It all suddenly felt built on the broken foundation of a dark family choice. He pressed the letter to his chest, his breath shallow, his eyes burning with tears. Why now? Why tell me this now? He whispered. Arjun leaned closer, his expression grim. Because the past is not finished with us, Sundar. The people connected to this legacy, they are still out there, and they are watching. You may be the CEO of Google, but to them, you are only the child who was chosen, and they will come for you. The legacy of shadows, the letter trembled in Sundar's hands as though the paper itself carried the weight of generations. The ink, faded yet haunting, spoke of a choice that should never have belonged to any family, a choice between two lives. His grandfather's words repeated in his mind like a curse. One child will be given the chance to rise, the other must be hidden, for only one can carry the family legacy without danger. His chest tightened as he tried to breathe. He looked at his father, who sat hunched in his chair, his cane shaking in his grip, guilt etched across his tired face. Sundar had always seen his father as the man who sacrificed everything so his son could dream. Now he saw him as someone who carried a terrible secret, someone who had chosen silence while his children lived divided fates. Appa, Sundar's voice cracked. What legacy? What danger? Why would our grandfather say something like this? His father closed his eyes, as though hiding from the truth he could no longer escape. It was not meant for you to know. Not like this. The world we lived in back then was cruel, filled with men who wanted to control, to destroy. Your grandfather believed our family carried something worth protecting, something powerful. He thought only one of you could survive with it. So he told us to choose. Sundar's heart pounded. Protect what? What was so important that it demanded the sacrifice of a child? Before his father could answer, Arjun's voice cut in, sharp and heavy. Don't let him twist the truth, Sundar. What he calls protection was really cowardice. They didn't want to fight. They didn't want to face the danger. So they chose the easy path, hide one child, let the other rise, and pretend the sacrifice was noble. Sundar turned to his brother. Arjun, what danger? What do you know? Arjun's eyes darkened, his jaw tight. I only know what they told me when I was old enough to understand. They said our family was once tied to powerful men, Men who dealt with secrets, with knowledge that could ruin or save entire lives. Your grandfather guarded something, information, documents. I don't know exactly. But he feared that if both of us grew together, both of us would be targets. So he gave them only one name, only one face to follow. You. The room fell silent. Sundar felt the ground beneath him shifting. He had spent his life believing his rise came from determination, from his parents' sacrifices, from hard work. But now he wondered, had it all been set in motion by forces he never understood? Had his very existence as Google's CEO been built on an ancient decision to make him the chosen one? His father's voice cracked again. Sundar, please, it was not like that. We were just trying to survive. We did not know what your grandfather truly meant. I thought it was superstition, paranoia. But I feared if I disobeyed, harm would come to both of you. I chose silence. I chose survival. Sundar buried his face in his hands. The life he had built now felt like a fragile tower standing on hidden lies. Arjun leaned closer, his voice heavy with bitterness. You lived the dream. I lived the nightmare. But the past is not done with us. The men tied to this so-called legacy, they still exist. I have seen them, Sundar. They watch, they whisper. When I came to this city, one of them followed me. I don't know who they are, but they know our names, and they know about you. Sundar looked up sharply. What are you saying? That they're still out there watching me? Yes, Arjun said firmly. And they don't want the world to know the truth. That you were chosen at my expense. That your family made a deal. They want to keep their power hidden and they will do anything to protect it. A chill ran down Sundar's spine. He thought of his life. Boardrooms, speeches, interviews broadcast across the world. How many faces had watched him, not with admiration but with calculation? How many had seen him not as a leader, but as the child of a secret arrangement? His father clutched the arm of his chair. They will not hurt you, Sundar. You are too visible, too powerful now. That was why the choice was made. To protect you. Arjun's fist clenched. And what about me? Was I not worth protecting? The silence that followed was unbearable. The sound of the clock ticking on the wall seemed louder than ever, marking every painful second. Sundar's father had no answer. Finally, Sundar rose. From his chair, his body trembling but his voice steady. Enough. We cannot keep circling this secret like frightened children. If there are people watching, if there is danger, then I need to know exactly what we are dealing with. I will not live my life in shadows. Arjun, show me everything you have. Arjun's expression hardened, but he nodded. He pulled out more papers from his envelope. Letters, scraps of notes, faded photographs. One of them caught Sundar's eye, immediately. It was a photograph of a man in a white suit standing beside his grandfather. His face was stern, his eyes cold, and behind him were men in uniforms that looked official, almost military. Who is that? Sundar asked, pointing. Arjun's voice was low. They called him Sharma. He was one of the men tied to this legacy. I don't know what his role was, but he was always there, always watching. The people who raised me said he was dangerous. They said he had power over many families, that he could destroy anyone who stood in his way. Sundar studied the face, a shiver crawling down his spine. Even though the photograph was decades old, something about the man's eyes felt alive, as though they could still reach through time and watch him now. His father's hands shook violently. Do not speak his name. Do not bring his shadow into this house. Arjun glared at him. You see? Even now, he is afraid, but fear will not protect us anymore. Before Sundar could respond, a sudden noise outside made them all freeze. The sound of a car pulling up, doors shutting, footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching the house. Sundar's father went pale. No, it cannot be. Arjun's eyes narrowed and he whispered, They found us. The footsteps grew louder, crunching on the gravel, stopping just outside the door. The silence that followed was suffocating. broken only by the faint hum of the streetlight. Then a knock. Slow, heavy, echoing through the small house like a warning. 3 knocks. Deliberate. Powerful. Sundar's chest tightened as he exchanged a glance with Arjun. "What do we do?" Sundar whispered. Arjun's voice was grim. "We open the door, because running is no longer an option." The men at the door, the knock echoed again, slower this time, each thud vibrating through the small house like a heartbeat of dread. Sundar felt his chest tighten as if the walls themselves were closing in. He glanced at his father, who looked as though all the color had drained from his face. His lips trembled, his eyes fixed on the door as if it had suddenly become a gateway to ghosts he had spent a lifetime trying to avoid. Arjun, however, stood tall, his body tense, his fists clenched, eyes locked with the wooden door that now separated them from the unknown. "They're here," he whispered, his tone steady but laced with anger. "The ones I told you about, the ones tied to this cursed legacy." Sundar's mind raced. As a CEO, he was accustomed to handling crises, angry investors, governments, pressing for answers, competitors trying to undermine him. But this was different. This wasn't about business, about policy, about strategy. This was about blood, family, secrets buried so deep they had twisted his very life without him knowing. His father suddenly gripped Sundar's arm, his voice shaking. "Don't open it. Don't let them in. If you see their faces, if they see yours, everything changes." Arjun turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "Appa, enough hiding. Hiding is what destroyed me. Hiding is what gave me this life of emptiness. We face them now. No more secrets." The knocking stopped. Silence wrapped itself around the room like a heavy blanket. The absence of sound was almost worse than the knocks themselves. Sundar felt his palms damp with sweat as the quiet stretched on, each second louder than the last. Then, without warning, a voice came from outside. Deep, calm, commanding. "Mr. Pichai, we know you're inside. It is time to talk." Sundar froze. The way they said his name, it wasn't the title of a CEO, not the respect of billions, but something darker, older, as though they knew him not as the world's Sundar Pichai, but as the boy chosen from birth by a secret arrangement. Arjun stepped closer to the door, his hand reaching for the handle. "This ends tonight," he muttered. "Wait," Sundar said, his voice strained. "We don't know who they are, what they want." But before he could finish, the door swung open with a sudden creak. 3 men stood outside, all dressed in dark suits, their faces sharp, their presence overwhelming. The leader, tall with streaks of silver in his hair, stepped forward first. His eyes were cold, piercing, the kind that didn't need to raise a voice to command fear. Behind him, the other 2 stood silent, watchful, like shadows ready to strike at any moment. The leader's gaze swept across the room, landing on Sundar, then Arjun, then finally the frail figure of their father. A faint, knowing smile curved his lips. "So," he said quietly, "the family is together again." The word sent chills down Sundar's spine. He exchanged a glance with Arjun, whose jaw clenched tighter with each passing second. Their father tried to rise, his hands trembling, on the cane. "Leave us," he said, his voice weak but desperate. "We want no part in your games anymore." The man's smile widened slightly, though it carried no warmth. "Games? This is no game, old man. This is history. This is destiny, and you cannot run from it." He stepped further inside, his eyes now fixed on Sundar. "You must be Sundar, the chosen son, the one your grandfather entrusted with the family's future." Sundar swallowed hard, his mind torn between denial and the chilling possibility that every word was true. "Who are you?" he asked. The man tilted his head slightly as though amused. "My name is Dev Sharma. Perhaps you have heard the name whispered by your father. Perhaps not. But your grandfather knew me well. He and I made arrangements. Agreements that shaped the path of your life." Arjun's eyes blazed. "Arrangements? You mean stealing my life and giving it to him?" Dev's gaze shifted to Arjun, studying him with curiosity. Ah, the hidden sun, the sacrifice. I see the anger in your eyes, Arjun. But understand this. Your suffering was not without purpose. It kept the balance. It allowed the legacy to survive. Sundar stepped forward, his voice sharp. Stop speaking in riddles. What legacy? What balance? What did my grandfather give you? Dev's smile vanished, replaced by a cold seriousness. Your grandfather protected information. Secrets that powerful men feared would come to light. Evidence of corruption, crimes, deals that could have toppled governments. He hid it well, scattered it, encrypted it in ways that only his bloodline could unlock. But he knew the danger. He knew enemies like us would come for it. So he made his choice, one child to carry the knowledge openly, one to disappear as a shield. Sundar's head spun. Encrypted information? Governments? Enemies? His grandfather had been no businessman. He was a simple man, or so Sundar had believed. Could it be true that beneath his ordinary life lay secrets that powerful men feared? Arjun stepped forward, fury in his voice. And what about me? What was I? Just the shield, the distraction? Dev looked at him calmly. You were survival, Arjun. As long as you existed, as long as no one knew which child carried the true path, your brother was safe. You lived in the shadow so he could live in the light. Arjun's face twisted with rage. I was never given a choice. None of us are, Dev said simply. The room filled with silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on them all. Sundar's mind whirled. He thought of his journey from a small boy in Chennai to the leader of Google, and now he wondered, had he truly been building his own destiny, or had every step been guided by a shadowy deal made long before he understood the world? He turned to his father, who looked crushed beneath the burden of his silence. Appa, is this true? His father closed his eyes, tears slipping down his wrinkled cheeks. Yes, Sundar. It is true. Your grandfather feared men like him. I was too weak to fight, so I obeyed. I thought if I kept you hidden in greatness, both of you would survive. But I see now. I only created pain. The words pierced Sundar's heart. But before he could respond, Dev stepped closer, lowering his voice to a dangerous calm. And now, Sundar, it is time. The knowledge your grandfather carried. The keys are in you. You may not even know it yet, but you hold the last piece. And we have come to claim it. The air turned heavy. Sundar felt his stomach drop. Claim it? What do you mean? Dev's cold eyes locked onto him. You will give us access to the codes, to the documents, to the legacy your grandfather left. If you refuse, then the world will learn the truth about you. That your rise was built on betrayal. That your twin was abandoned so you could stand in the light. How long do you think your reputation will last once that truth is everywhere? Sundar's blood ran cold. It wasn't just about secrets now. It was about his name, his family, his life's work, the trust of billions who looked up to him. One revelation could destroy everything. Arjun suddenly stepped between Sundar and Dev, his voice like fire. You won't touch him. You won't use him like you used me. Dev smirked, unfazed. Brave, but foolish. You don't know the power. We hold. Then show me. Arjun spat, his fists clenched. Dev's eyes gleamed. Very well. He snapped his fingers. The two silent men behind him stepped forward, placing a thick black folder on the table. Dev opened it slowly, revealing photographs, documents, and names. He slid one photo across the table toward Sundar. Sundar's eyes widened in shock. It was a picture of himself, taken recently outside Google headquarters. But the caption written beneath in red letters sent a shiver through his body. Subject, the chosen heir. Monitor at all costs. His entire body went cold. They had been watching him. Every step, every move, even as he led one of the most powerful companies in the world. Dev leaned closer, his voice low but sharp. You see, Sundar? We already know. You. We already own the shadows of your life. The only question is, will you hand us what we want willingly, or will you make us take it? The room went silent, every breath heavy, Every heartbeat loud. Sundar felt trapped, torn between his brother, his father, and the terrifying man before him who claimed to hold his future in his hands. His lips trembled as he tried to speak, but no words came. Then Arjun placed a hand on Sundar's shoulder, his voice steady, protective. Don't answer him, Sundar. Not yet. Because he doesn't know everything. There is one thing I learned in the shadows that he doesn't expect. Dev's cold smile faltered for the first time. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Arjun's voice grew firm, filled with quiet defiance. Something our grandfather left behind. Something hidden. Not even you can reach it. Sundar turned to his brother, his heart pounding. What do you mean, Arjun? What did you find? Arjun looked straight into his eyes. The truth, Sundar. The real truth. And if we can find it together, it will change everything. The truth that sets them free. The room seemed to hold its breath as Arjun's words lingered in the air. The real truth. Something hidden. Even Dev Sharma's cold confidence faltered for a moment, his sharp eyes narrowing as though trying to pierce into Arjun's soul. Sundar stared at his brother, his heart racing faster than it ever had in a boardroom, faster than it had in moments of global crisis. Arjun, he whispered, his voice trembling. What are you talking about? What truth? Arjun's gaze was steady, his jaw clenched, with determination. While I was living in the shadows, broken and abandoned, I kept searching. I dug through every scrap of paper those bitter relatives kept hidden, every whisper they left behind. And one day I found a key, an old box buried beneath the floorboards. Inside was a notebook. Our grandfather's handwriting, his true words, not the lies passed down through fear. Dev's face darkened, his voice sharp. You lie. Nothing was hidden. We collected everything from him before he died. Arjun's lips curved into a bitter smile. You think you collected everything? You think he would give all his power to men like you? No. He was clever. He left behind one final piece hidden where only family could find it, and I found it. Sundar's father gasped softly, his frail body trembling. The notebook, he whispered. You found it? Arjun nodded. Yes, Appa, and in it, our grandfather wrote the truth. The legacy was never about giving one child a life and sacrificing the other. It was never about obeying men like him. He shot a sharp glance at Dev. It was about protecting knowledge, yes, but also about protecting each other. The line that said, one child will rise, the other must disappear. It was written as a warning of what enemies would try to force us into, not as a command to follow. The air seemed to crackle with revelation. Sundar's breath caught in his throat. Could it be? Had they lived their whole lives under a false interpretation of their grandfather's words? Dev slammed his hand on the table, his calm facade breaking. Lies. Convenient lies to comfort yourself. If this notebook existed, then where is it? Show it to me. Arjun's eyes blazed. Do you think I'd bring it here into your hands? No, it is safe. And in it are names, documents, proof of everything. Your crimes, your corruption, your manipulation of families like ours. One move from me and the world will know who you really are. For the first time, Dev looked unsettled. His men shifted, uneasily, glancing at each other, no longer as solid in their intimidation. Sundar stepped forward, his voice steady, rising with conviction. So that's it. All these years, our family lived in fear because of men like you. My father broke under the weight. My brother suffered in the shadows, and I was used as a pawn in a game I never even knew existed. But no more. If the truth exists, we will bring it to the light. Together. Arjun turned to him, his hardened expression softening for the first time. His eyes, so much like Sundar's, carried a glimmer of hope. Together, he said quietly. Dev's jaw tightened, his control slipping. If you expose us, you destroy yourselves as well. Do you not see? The world will never forgive your family for what you did, for abandoning one son for the rise of another. Sundar's father, frail and weak, suddenly pushed himself to his feet with trembling strength. His voice, though thin, cut through the air with surprising power. No, the world will not hate my sons. The world will see that even in betrayal, even in mistakes, they chose to do what I never had the courage to do. Stand together. I was weak, but they will be strong. The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Sundar looked at his father, with tears burning his eyes. For the first time, he saw the man not as the unshakable figure of his childhood, but as a human being broken by regret, still trying to make things right in his final days.